Thousands of brave young men died here. Tens of thousands more marched on to secure an Allied victory in Europe.
One. Okay. That wasn't as bad as I had built it up to be. Now what do I do?
This is where Kennedy leaves me hanging. The safety device is designed to allow me to get back in the stand.
The vest covers the most vulnerable areas such as the torso and under the arms. And this is a bullet that was stopped by a vest like the one I'm wearing. As soon as we landed in Paris, we saw veterans at the airport being stopped for autographs and to take pictures. Not many answers from the GSA. That subcommittee wants three things: better cooperation from the GSA.
And the fire department tells me that that chute actually acted like a chimney, sucking up all of that smoke.
We can walk through Pliers Mill.
Heather McCullough remembers the way.
I lived just there.
I'm trying to envision what this would have looked like in 1975, say after school, just kids running house to house, come home for supper, that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Kensington, Maryland could have been in a real estate brochure back then, selling the American dream to young families.
At the time, it's a very close-knit neighborhood. There were a lot of kids. Just in every house here, there were kids.
Two little girls, the Lyon sisters, lived at the corner of Pliers Mill and Jennings.
We'd go about 2 blocks up here where Sheila and Kate lived, where we walked almost every day together for a couple years. That was the school, Oakland Terrace. It was a great school and everyone knew everyone.
Heather was the same age as Sheila, in the same grade.
So what was it like being in that class and her desk being empty?
Sad. Yeah, there was a big hole. I do remember us having an assembly about it, and to the principal telling the kids to be very careful.
The neighborhood kids had just gone back to school after Easter break, but the only sign at all of the Lyon sisters.
And they had signs everywhere, kind of the paper posters with the Lyon sisters. Sheila in her Coke bottle glasses and Kate with her big bright smile. And they would post them along the trees in the grocery stores. So whenever we would be walking up to schools after that, we would constantly see their face. And that happened, that lasted at least a good year.
What was that like, just seeing their face everywhere they go, but not actually seeing them?
Well, it gave us all in some ways it gave us hope that they're still alive and there's still a chance that they'll find them.
Everything changed here the day Sheila and Kate did not come home.
We could cut through to get to the Wheaton Plaza.
Parents would no longer let their children take the wooded shortcut by themselves.
The neighborhood where we kind of had a shutdown, whereas we weren't running around as much. There was more tension about where are you, what are you doing, and I can remember them maybe giving us specific times to come home.
Sheila and Kate were supposed to be home by 4. Nearly 40 years later, their parents still wait, still living in the same house.
They're definitely in their parents' hearts.
On a neighborhood street where families were busy living out their dreams, one family's nightmare happened just a half mile from home.
Len and Noreen, the ballistic vest that I'm wearing right now, it was not made for me. It was custom fitted for the deputy who wears it. That fitting ensures that the vest covers the most vulnerable areas such as the torso and under the arms. And this is a bullet that was stopped by a vest like the one I'm wearing. You'll see that in just a minute. Of course, these vests, they don't come cheap. But members of our law enforcement community say we should not be worried about saving money when it comes to something proven to save lives.
A suspected drunk driver opened fire on an Albuquerque police officer earlier this year. 17 years ago, a local deputy stopped a driver for the same thing.
The next thing I saw was the muzzle flash as he fired rounds towards me.
And the same thing happened to him. Just like that officer in New Mexico, Jay Spiva survived. On March 1st, 1998, Spiva was just 3 months out of the academy. It was 3 a.m. when he made that traffic stop in Botetourt County.
obviously knew I had been shot immediately. I could feel there was a blunt trauma and a burning feeling. One of them hit approximately center sternum area. One of them a little left and lower than that in the lower rib cage area. They did tell me that one of the shots potentially certainly could have been fatal if I had not had the vest on.
There it is.
A .40 caliber bullet fired from Bedford County investigator Steve Smith's pistol at close range.
It just barely went in a layer or two.
Into a vest that's already past the date. The manufacturer said it should be replaced. We'd never do this test with a vest that's still good. They're too expensive. Had an actual officer been wearing this vest, he'd no doubt be injured, but without it on.
So this would be a shoot-to-kill shot.
Oh, absolutely. If that would kill you at that distance, that caliber of weapon, that close, without a vest, one shot would most likely kill you.
Those layers between an officer and a bullet, the difference between a sheriff visiting his deputy in the hospital or paying his respects at the funeral home.
His weapon, his car, his vehicle, his uniform, the vest is part of the uniform.
It's not an accessory, it's essential, says Mike Brown. In his nearly 20 years as Bedford County Sheriff, Brown says he's never had to convince county supervisors to keep vests in his budget. But Brown learned that in other communities across Virginia, ballistic vests, which can cost hundreds, if not thousands, are not provided to law enforcement officers.
We get inquiries almost every day from law enforcement agencies in Virginia.
In 2013, the Protect the Protectors program, founded by Sheriff Brown, was awarded $245,000 from the Abbott Labs asset forfeiture. That money purchased 500 vests for law enforcement officers in every corner of the Commonwealth. Attorney General Mark Herring was in Bedford County for a vest presentation. But it was a one-time deal. Herring's office tells ABC 13 the money handed out for public safety by his predecessor, Ken Cuccinelli, is gone. The massive Abbott Labs settlement, an anomaly. There won't be another round for the 22 agencies on the vest program's wait list to fulfill requests for 300 more vests.
Monthly, we'll get several calls saying, hey, we've put in a request for vests, but, do you have any idea, when we'll get them? And we have to tell them, no, we don't.
We can issue a gun, badge, uniform, vest, where it's part of the issued equipment. I'd love to be in that position.
Danville Sheriff Mike Mondel is not there yet, although his office will use some of its nearly $118,000 from the Abbott Labs settlement to buy vests. Danville is on the Protect the Protectors wait list. Until Mondel is able to cover all 72 sworn deputies, he's in triage mode, trying to decide who gets vests.
It's risky business when you're trying to predict, a horrific event. Because they happen without notice.
I can't imagine a worst case situation if someone were to get hurt and the decision had been made to give someone else the vest. He would carry that the rest of his life. I mean, that's not the kind of decision sheriffs need to be making.
But it's a decision Virginia Sheriff's Association Executive Director John Jones knows they are forced to make. He estimates the number of deputies who don't have vests at all to be in the hundreds. A recent survey will give his organization a more accurate number in the coming weeks. The Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police does not have a comprehensive list of which Virginia police departments lack vests altogether.
And then you've got the deputies that may have them that are expired, won't function when they need to function to the extent they should. They may not meet the standard because it's old, it's worn out. Those vests take a beating.
They're designed to take a bullet. Unlike the officer in New Mexico, Spiva doesn't have a body camera recording to tell his survival story. Instead, he still has the uniform shirt he was wearing. He loans it to the local Criminal Justice Academy to show new recruits during their officer survival training. Spiva's vest hangs on the wall at the Botetourt County Sheriff's Office. Deputies have to walk past it to get to their patrol cars.
Jay Spiva is just one of the nearly 3,200 law enforcement officers inducted into the International Association of Chiefs of Police DuPont Kevlar Survivors Club. That's more than 3,000 officers saved by their vests since 1987. That life-saving fiber is being made right here in Virginia. In 2011, DuPont made a $50 million investment to expand Kevlar capacity at its plant near Richmond and spent $500 million to expand a Kevlar facility in South Carolina. And after watching this, we know that some of you might want to help. So we've put a link to the Protect the Protectors online donation page at WSET.com. Now, we recently visited Arlington for the service of Colonel Robert Cranston, and just as soon as we returned to Lynchburg, we learned of another local veteran, Chief Warrant Officer Donald Mustard. He had passed away and is now waiting for honors at Arlington. It's a cycle with really no end in sight. Before the sound of horses.
He always told me he wanted to be buried up there.
Before the shots.
Sometimes it catches them off guard, you know, when you tell them it's going to be months.
Before taps.
You know it's going to happen, but you just don't know when.
Before all of that, there's the sound of silence as families of our fallen wait months for the phone to ring.
Hi, this is Lisa Davis calling from Arlington National Cemetery. We're calling to schedule services for your loved one, ma'am.
They said, well, you know, probably be late August or September.
But it would be mid-November before Colonel Robert Cranston, a pioneer in military broadcasting, would be laid to rest at Arlington. His widow Sandy waited patiently for 9 months after his passing to walk behind his caisson, to sit by his grave, to be handed his flag.
I was wondering how it would affect me emotionally.
They come back to me and told me it was going to be at least a month and a half before we could even think about getting up there. So then everybody, you know, waited.
They waited 4 long months before Captain Raymond Knoll, one of the original Bedford boys, would make it to his final resting place at Arlington. His nephew, Robert Bryant, says there was no question when it came time to make the arrangements.
He always told me that, you know, that's the way, you know, wanted to be.
We have to explain that you do understand that there's going to be a time, you know, distance and all as far as when you're having services here versus when burial will take place in Arlington.
Funeral director Dale Robertson handled Captain Knoll's arrangements with Arlington. Robertson has more than 30 years' experience carrying veterans to their final resting places at the National Cemetery.
The first time was just a phone call and give them the veteran's ID number, and now we have to get signed documents, and it's signed a case number, and they call us back weeks or months later.
There is a lack of closure because obviously they can't have that final committal service that they've been waiting for.
Through his funeral home, Chris Tharp is currently assisting 10 families waiting for their loved ones' burials or interments at Arlington.
And many of these individuals, their spouses are not young and are not healthy, and for them to have to wait that amount of time is not only an emotional stress, but a physical stress for them to want to hold on to be able to attend those services at Arlington.
World War II veterans, you know, they are now 85 years old plus, the majority of them, so they're dying at a very rapid rate. I mean, we're talking thousands per week.
There was a lot of funerals ahead of his because a lot of World War II heroes are dying.
There's just a greater number of eligible individuals that left service with an honorable discharge that are requesting, their families are requesting to come to Arlington National Cemetery.
As Arlington's director of interment, Renee Yates' staff takes 35 to 40 burial request calls each day.
Typical day at Arlington is 27 to 30 funeral services. The demand is much higher than our ability to meet the demand, at least to keep pace with it on a day-to-day basis.
Yates says there's a constant balance of family wishes versus available resources. The level of service earned and requested can decide how long a family will wait.
There are families that will waive even portions of the particular honors. We do have many families that choose to have the caisson. They want the full experience that they know can be provided at Arlington National Cemetery.
Colonel Cranston's last request?
He'd like the white horses if possible.
Captain Knoll's family also opted for the full honors he'd earned.
I got what he wanted.
Tributes befitting men who honored the flag in life. In death,
the flag honors them.
And it was like the conclusion of a dream because we had been waiting so long for our turn.
Arlington has started conducting services on Saturdays, but they are only for spouses and minor or dependent children, not for anyone receiving military honors. And there are no casket burials on Saturday, only services for cremations. Len and Noreen.
Looking at that video that Jamal shot earlier today with his cell phone camera. Now, we haven't had time to actually take a good look at the video and count the number of shots, and it may be very hard to even do so because there's a lot of noise going on in the background. But we asked Jamal about how many he could guess that he heard, and he said about 10 or 15, maybe in 30 seconds to a minute. So a very harrowing scene out there this morning, and you may be able to see towards the end of the video. I don't have it right in front of me, so hopefully you're going to see this in just a second. There are actually police officers. You'll hear Jamal say, "Whoa," when he hears some sort of bang inside the building, and then some officers, once they hear him, run towards him and tell him, get down, get away, get away. And you see the ground, you see the concrete there, and he said at that point, that's when he turned around, ran the other way, and started telling everyone that he came in contact with to do the same.
Congressman Bob Goodlatte says he wasn't getting answers from the General Services Administration, so he asked for a hearing, but the GSA came ready with talking points, trying to avoid answering questions about breaking the law when awarding the contract.
Jens Soring's hair is graying, but in 2 decades, not much else has changed for him inside prison walls, including his story. In 1990, he uttered these words inside Bedford County Circuit Courtroom.
I'm innocent.
Today, Soring says,
I'm not a murderer, but I was convicted wrongly of 2 murders.
Those words spoken inside a conference room at the Buckingham Correctional Center. Soring is pinning his hopes of getting out of here on DNA analysis, a tool that didn't exist at the time of his conviction. Results of DNA testing performed in 2009 under Virginia's post-conviction DNA testing program eliminate Soring as a contributor of some evidence collected by investigators at the Haysom home in 1985. Soring has type O blood. That blood type was found at the murder scene, but those samples were tested so much between 1985 and 1990 that blood was used up.
There's none of that left to compare to your blood.
Correct, yes.
So that doesn't necessarily prove that that blood isn't your blood.
That's true.
Soring contends it was Elizabeth Haysom who killed her parents with the help of an unknown accomplice.
So she was there with somebody who has O-type blood.
The 2009 DNA results also eliminate Elizabeth Haysom as a contributor. There are no DNA profiles for the victims, Derek and Nancy Haysom, so it's unknown whether the tested samples came from them. The samples do not match anyone in Virginia's DNA database.
It's not my job to find the perpetrator.
But Soring has made attempting to get out of prison his life's work. The German citizen is asking Governor Bob McDonnell to parole and deport him based on that DNA report. He's not asking the Commonwealth to clear his name.
I don't think anybody owes me an apology, really. It would be nice. That's like a daydream of mine, okay? I owe Virginia an apology, and I've apologized many times, and I'll do it again now. I am truly sorry. I really am for lying to the police. I should not have done it. I was dead wrong to do it.
Soring claims the only thing he's guilty of is being an accessory after the fact. He says by going on the run with Elizabeth to cover up the crime he says she committed. If that had been all he was convicted of, Soring would have been out of jail after a year. Instead, he says,
locking somebody up for 25 years for something he didn't do and then continuing to lock him up, knowing what's now come out, that's evil.
In Dillwyn, Angela Hatcher, WSLS 10 on your side.
Len, we return to the crash scene, and although most of the B-25 Mitchell bomber is still there, there are no real answers about what led to the demise of 5 airmen on that mountain 70 years ago this Saturday.
A landmark of the grandest scale, many a journey to Sharptop ends with travelers lost in the mountain's majestic beauty. Unfortunately, that's not how this story begins or ends.
They had absolutely no idea where they were or what they were into.
On a night navigation mission, a B-25, similar to this one, takes off from Columbia Army Air Base, South Carolina, with 5 airmen on board. A 21-year-old from Oklahoma, with just 112 flight hours under his belt, pilots the mission. It's about 9:30, and the unfamiliar Blue Ridge is camouflaged by a midnight-colored sky.
1943, second day of February.
Bobby Key, 13 at the time, was out with his brothers.
We just stopped, and that thing come right on over, and it hit that mountain. A big ball of fire run up in the sky, and then we got a boom. We blurred out. Paul, we believe the Germans done shot out one of our planes.
It wasn't the enemy.
The plane has on it number 129828.
Was the message relayed from a Bedford police captain in a telephone call with an Army major back at the air base. That tail number confirms the plane that hit Sharp Top is the B-25, last reported over Raleigh about a half hour before people in Bedford heard the loud engines overhead.
The B-25 is a huge plane.
Jay Maxfield, who isn't old enough to have heard the thunderous noise with his own ears or to have seen the mountain in flames with his own eyes, has only heard the tales passed down from the mountain to the younger generations. Grainy black and whites tell Maxfield more than the colorful language of his elders.
If you look at the pictures of the plane crash, the pictures that were taken the day after, you'll see the elevators on the back of the plane are locked up. That means that there was an instant when the pilot knew that he was in trouble and he tried to raise it, and you just couldn't bring it up that fast.
Nor could you bring the pieces down easily. The sun has set on this slope more than 25,000 times since that night back in 1943. The B-25 is still here. Its pieces as jagged as the peak of the mountain they rest on.
One of the engines is at the top. One of the engines marks the bottom of the debris field.
Too heavy for scavengers to leave with. Curiosity seekers leave their marks instead in what's left of Army green paint.
Somebody's crawled inside and scratched it all to pieces.
That same paint once made finding the wreckage difficult. A shot in the dark for search parties that night. Men from town wouldn't reach the site until after midnight on foot.
They told about that terrible scene that they come upon.
The wreckage presented a scene of horror not often witnessed, according to the February 4th, 1943 edition of the Bedford Bulletin. Startling news for Key's mother, who had a son serving in the war. She felt a sorrow for 5 other mothers in hometowns far from Bedford.
And she used to term their little boys have lost their life right there on that mountain.
Somebody has lost their boys.
At the Bedford Museum, Jennifer Thompson is sometimes asked to tell Bedford's war story, a story that includes a piece of a wing from the B-25, whose final resting place is 2,000 feet above the town, and the men who died right there beside it.
They took care of them like they were their own boys.
That meant decades later, in 2001, the placement of their names in bronze at this crash site memorial.
Second Lieutenant George R. Beninga, bombardier, age 23, Marietta, Minnesota. Corporal Peter J. Biskin, engineer, age 29, Chicago, Illinois. Second Lieutenant Hillary S. Blackwell, navigator, age 22, Santa Monica, California. Second Lieutenant William C. McClure, co-pilot, age 22, Indianapolis, Indiana. Second Lieutenant Paul M. Pitts, pilot, age 21, Poteau, Oklahoma.
These young men died up here. The way I look at it, their DNA is still in this earth.
The Army classified the cause of the crash as unknown. In witness statements, people who were outside that night said the engine sounded as if they were running perfectly, despite the tales told through the years that it was rainy and foggy that night, like it was the day we hiked the mountain. The official aircraft accident report lists the weather that night as CAVU, or Ceiling and Visibility Unlimited. In 2001, the Virginia General Assembly declared February 2nd of each year Forgotten Airmen Day, so that these 5 airmen will never be forgotten.